All right, today we're going to dive into a modern classic, Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. Now, most of us are taught that money is all about math, right? Spreadsheets, formulas, hard science. But this book flips that whole idea on its head. It argues that the single biggest thing that determines your financial success has almost nothing to do with how smart you are, and everything to do with how you behave. So let's get into it.
And this quote right here, it's basically the whole book in one sentence. It's a total game changer. Housel's saying that success with money isn't really about what you know from a textbook, it's about how you act. And that's tricky, because how we act is all tangled up in our own emotions, our own biases, and the unique life experiences we've had.
So let's just completely reframe how we're thinking about this. We're not in the clean, perfect world of spreadsheets anymore. We're stepping into the messy, unpredictable world of human psychology. We're talking about ego, fear, greed, and your own personal history. And you know what? That means managing money is less about being a math whiz and a lot more about really understanding yourself.
To get a handle on our own behavior, Housel kicks things off with this really foundational idea. No one is crazy. The things people do with money that look absolutely bonkers from the outside, like, say, blowing their savings on lottery tickets or panic selling stocks at the worst possible time, well, to the person doing it, it makes perfect sense. It's all based on their own unique view of how the world works.
And this is a perfect example of why. Just think about it. You've got two people, both super smart. One person grows up, and in their formative years, they see the stock market basically go nowhere. The other person grows up and sees the market go up tenfold. Of course, they're going to have completely different, almost opposite ideas about investing. Their personal experience literally shaped their reality.
Okay, so if we accept that our own personal experience feels like the whole truth, that leads us right to the next big point, the incredibly powerful but totally invisible forces of luck and risk. We love to tell ourselves that success is all about skill and hard work, right? But Housel argues that pure random chance plays a much bigger role than our egos ever want to admit.
And to really drive this point home, he uses the story of Bill Gates. So picture this. It's 1968. There are over 300 million kids of high school age on the entire planet. That is a massive sea of potential geniuses. But out of those 303 million, only about 300 of them went to a high school that had a computer. And Bill Gates just happened to be one of them. Now, was he a driven, brilliant guy? Absolutely, no question. But he also hit a 1 in a million lottery ticket of pure luck that gave him a head start that almost no one else on earth had. But here's the tragic flip side of that coin: risk. Gates had a friend, Ken Evans, who by all accounts was just as smart, just as driven. They were going to start a company together, but Kent died in a freak mountaineering accident before they graduated. A 1 in a million event, but in the opposite direction. For every lucky Bill Gates story, there's a tragic risk story like Kent Evans. And that's why Housel says we should focus less on specific people and more on broad, general patterns.
So when you really start to respect the power of luck and risk, it forces you to look at one of the biggest ideas in the whole book. Getting rich and staying rich are not the same thing. In fact, they are two completely different skills. Housel says the mindsets you need for each are often polar opposites.
Let's just break down the psychology of that. To get wealthy in the first place, you need a ton of optimism. You have to be willing to take big risks, to swing for the fences. But to stay wealthy, that takes humility. It takes a little bit of paranoia even. It's about having a survival mindset and being constantly aware that the same kind of risk that made you could also be the thing that wipes you out.
And the story of Jesse Livermore is just the ultimate cautionary tale here. The guy was an absolute master trader. He made a fortune shorting the market during the Great Crash of 1929. He was a certified genius at getting rich, but he just couldn't make that mental switch to the survival mindset. He kept making bigger and bigger and bigger bets until one day he lost it all.
So the crucial takeaway is this: the single most important financial skill you can have is just survival. It's about being durable, staying in the game long enough to let the incredible magic of compounding do all the heavy lifting for you. Honestly, way more fortunes have been lost trying to get rich quick than have ever been lost in a market crash.
Okay, so we've talked about the mindsets for building wealth and for keeping it. But that kind of brings up a bigger question, doesn't it? What's the whole point? What are we actually trying to buy with our money? This next part really gets into the true value of wealth. Housel has this brilliant concept he calls the man in the car paradox. It goes like this. You see a guy in a Ferrari, and you think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm so cool. But here's the irony. When other people see you in that Ferrari, they don't think about you at all. They're just using your car as a mental shortcut to imagine themselves looking cool. Your fancy stuff doesn't actually buy you respect.
So, if money can't reliably buy you respect, what is its greatest and best use? It's this, right here. It's the ability to control your own time. The freedom to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That, Housel argues, is the ultimate dividend that money pays. It's autonomy. It's freedom. And if freedom is the real goal, then the single biggest threat to that freedom is not knowing when to stop moving the goalposts. I mean, look at the story of Rajat Gupta. The man was worth $100 million. He already had his freedom 10 times over. But he wanted to be a billionaire. So he risked everything he had for something he absolutely did not need. And he lost it all, ending up in a prison cell.
So how do we actually apply all of this stuff? Well, Housel's advice is surprisingly simple. Aim to be reasonable, not rational. See, a purely rational, machine-like investor might put every single dollar to work to maximize returns. But a reasonable person? They might keep a little extra cash on the side, even if it's not optimal, because it helps them sleep at night. And that peace of mind is worth way more than any tiny bit of extra return.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important question that Housel leaves us with. You know, this constant social comparison, wanting what the next person has, it's a battle you can't ever win. The only way to win is to just not play the game. In a world that is always screaming for more, the hardest financial skill is to get your own goalpost to stop moving. Without some sense of enough, that freedom we were just talking about is impossible. So the real question isn't just about how much money you can make. It's about what your definition of enough really is.